Yay.
Hello and welcome to the Old and in the Way comedy podcast with Bob and Mark, where we fight ageism one bad joke at a time. Reluctantly, we had to learn the hard way that denial and repression oftentimes are not enough to hold back the tides of reality before we get our tickets punched. So our mission is clear and compelling. We will pull back the veil on aging and reveal much of what's real and absurd with growing old. Political correctness be damned, and yes, of course, there will be malarkey. But before we get started, we'd like to thank our fictitious sponsor, Smart Again, a brain supplement, for their continued support. 3, 2, 1, remember remembering? Smart Again is a brain supplement that will have you wondering in no time how you got to be so damn smart again. Smart Again is made from all unnatural ingredients that will reverse your cognitive decline, heighten your mental acuity in just a few days. When I first heard about Smart Again, I didn't believe it. But after a few days of taking Smart Again, I've been able to find my car in the parking lot. I've stopped yelling at the neighbors' kids. And more times than not, when I walk into a room, I know why I'm there. It's an amazing product and cannot be found at fine stores everywhere. And ladies and gentlemen, showtime. And our special guest today is Mark Karan.
Karan.
Karan, yeah.
Karan, thank you. Sorry.
No worries.
That was the comedy part. So
Yeah, we've been working on that line for about a week, but all right. Showtime.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you for agreeing to this. And boy, I looked at your Wikipedia listing, and it's more impressive than even I thought, and I thought it would be amazing.
No.
So you're doing your first thing you should probably get to do is plug your next gig. You've got a Mark Karan's Buds gig coming up.
Actually, it just happened. It was last Thursday at the Sweetwater, and loads of fun. But yeah, that's in the rear view now.
Okay. And are you still doing Jeremiah Puddle Duck at all?
You know, not under that name. Much in the way that the Grateful Dead stopped being the Grateful Dead when Jerry went away. Right. Puddle Duck was one of those bands that's an actual band that, it matters who's on bass and it matters who's on drums, not just plug and play. So when that stopped being an option, all those guys live in Southern California. I kind of had to put that to bed. But when I do Mark Karan's Buds, it's the same ethic. It's my tunes and Americana tunes, but done with the sensibilities of the Grateful Dead, where we can stretch things out and have a little fun with them.
Good. Okay. Well, that gets me to one of the topics I wanted to talk about. You're one of the most eminent practitioners of the Grateful Dead and related songbook, and I noticed as the Dead, I guess, are doing their last hurrah or whatever it's now called with Lesh.
We'll see.
One thing I'm noticing is when I look at the listings in at least around here and probably elsewhere, it's almost all tribute bands and cover bands. It seems like it's harder to go hear original bands, and now there's not only a whole lot of people playing the Dead songbook, but there's Fleetwood Mac and Petty Theft and
Yep.
tributes to everybody. It used to be, I think you had to have permission, or there was a trademark issues, but that doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. I was wondering, for one thing, is why you think that's so prevalent, and what do you think it means, if anything, for music? I know it keeps alive the old guys, but does it give room for new guys?
Well, frankly, it doesn't really give a lot of room for the old guys either. I've talked to a bunch of the people that both book the clubs or book the bands into the clubs. And what I most often hear is that the only acts they can really count on, performing in terms of butts in the seats, are the legacy acts that have been around for a while and have big deal followings already, or tribute acts. And the other thing I've encountered is that a whole lot of my musician friends there's no real motivation or desire to necessarily write and create original music. They're happy to be out doing. I'm not. I'm an old fart. I come from the era when, the idea what was to listen to the Grateful Dead and be influenced, or whoever, and take those influences and come up with your thing that was different. And that's how you had new music in the world, and that's what kept everything alive and fresh. And
natural evolution.
Yeah, and there are still people doing that, but the ability to monetize that in any kind of effective way, a lot of that kind of thing, the opportunity to play the original music in some of the better rooms on the better nights, it's not the same.
No, it seems to me as if in the 60s and 70s, all there was room for was Frank Sinatra tribute bands or something.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I always say, if the music fan atmosphere were the same back in the 60s and 70s, when we had the phenomenal renaissance of music that we had during that era, we wouldn't even have a Grateful Dead or a Quicksilver Messenger Service, or any number of even bigger bands. Well, I don't know how you get bigger than the Grateful Dead, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I agree. So how does that, I mean, you both do your own original music, and you also, do tribute or offshoot bands of the Dead. As a musician, is one as satisfying as the other for you?
Not really. I mean, I think I always am more, I feel more spiritually, emotionally, personally connected when I'm playing either songs that I've had something to do with creating, or at least the more obscure covers that I can reinterpret and kind of make into my own. That's more inspiring to me. But the other thing is, and I don't know how much the Deadheads like this about me. In fact, it might have something to do with why I'm not a little bit more visible in that world these days, because I don't want to do a tribute band. And when I do Grateful Dead, I love the songs, and I love it when the Grateful Dead do it Grateful Dead style. But my music and my influences tend to be more Americana, blues. So, I try to put a little blackness in there. I try to put a little funky groove in there. I try to make it my own somehow, even though it's Grateful Dead.
And you were doing Ratdog for a long time, and that wasn't just a Grateful Dead cover band. That was
Far from it. That was Bobby's vision, and one of the interesting things about Bob's vision is he's always really respected jazz. And so, when he brought Jeff Chimenti and both Dave Ellis and Kenny Brooks, the two sax players that we had, when he brought them into the band, I think that his thinking was he wanted to bring a strong voice and influence from the jazz world into the Grateful Dead idiom. And after a couple of years of work, because at first it was a tough fit. It didn't quite work to me anyway. But after we'd played together for a couple of years and started really being a band and learning each other's musical twists and turns, it did exactly that. It turned into a band that was doing Grateful Dead music, but with these other influences and different kinds of interpretations.
How did you originally connect with these people?
Well, that's an odd story too, because I grew up in the Bay Area.
And where?
In San Francisco and then Half Moon Bay. I went to Half Moon Bay High School, graduated from Half Moon Bay High, and then a couple of years after high school, found myself turning my panel truck into a home and moving to Gate 5 in Sausalito. And I think that's about when Mr. Heyman and I first knew each other.
What years are those?
I first moved to Gate 5 in 74, I guess. I was 19.
Wow.
And I just moved to Sausalito in 74.
Oh, well, so we arrived at the same time.
Pretty much.
I remember playing this funky little club on Union Street called Generosity. Mm-hmm. And I was technically too young to be in there. So they let me play as long as when the band took a break, I sat on the stage.
Cool. I bought Dan Hicks' old houseboat in about 74.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we We were Sausalito mates. Uh, is there any more Ratdog in the offing, or is that a defunct thing?
I think Ratdog is done. I can't speak for Bobby, but my impression of it is I think he'll always want a Bob band, and now he has the Wolf Brothers to fulfill that. And I don't think he's looking to have yet another one. I think he takes the Wolf Brothers pretty seriously and honors it. So I think that's kind of his current Ratdog.
Can you continue and tell us how from Half Moon Bay to Gate 5 you made your next connection with the music industry in Marin, I guess?
Well, like I say, I was living in Half Moon Bay, and we had a band down there that nobody would have ever heard of called Hotel Hart, that was heavily influenced by the Sons of Champlin, actually.
Wow.
Sons of Champlin were actually my favorite band from the Haight-Ashbury milieu.
Loosen Up Naturally.
Yes, one of my all-time favorite records. And I've become friends through the years with Bill and with Terry Haggerty, and I feel so honored to have friendships with these people that I used to worship, So what happened? I left Half Moon Bay because I didn't see it getting me anywhere. I was always going to be in some local coastside band, and that was going to be the extent of it. And I knew that the Sons and the Grateful Dead and the Fairfax Street Choir and all these bands were up in Marin. And we used to cut school and go and drop on Mount Tam in Marin and whatnot. So I had a pretty strong attraction to Marin already. So yeah, I took my panel truck and I turned it into a home. And I had a friend that was renting a houseboat at Gate 5, and they let me park there. So I just drove up there, and the friend was this woman named Sarah Baker, wonderful singer, songwriter, piano player from Tennessee, by way of New Mexico, and into the blues kind of R&B Americana world. And we met when I was still in Half Moon Bay, and she invited me to come up and play with her when she's putting her band together. So that's kind of what got me there. And then once I was in Marin, it just felt like an old shoe. It was just a really comfortable fit. I needed to be there,
And how do you connect with the Dead?
Well, that's circuitous as hell. I'd been a fan for all those years. I lost him in about 76, I guess. I had listened from about 66 to about 76. And then I just started being interested in other kinds of music. I got into funk. I got into David Bowie stuff. I got into the whole sort of LA country rock thing. It was kind of like, yeah, well, what other music is out there? So I lost the Grateful Dead from 76 on until 1998. And I had moved in the interim in 91, I guess. I had moved to LA because once again, I'd gotten to a point where I felt like the Bay Area and Marin County was, I was only going to go so far. And I wanted to be on bigger tours. I wanted to, do session work for bigger records, all of that. And I thought, well, I need to be in either New York or LA, and I'd rather be in LA. So I moved down there, and I met John Molo down there. We did a bunch of session work together and some live dates. And in doing the live dates, I don't remember the gig itself, but I remember doing a gig with John where the person we were playing with pulled out Truckin' and said, let's do this. And John and I were like, yeah, okay, we know that song. And we started doing it, and John and I took it out. We started jamming. And we just looked at each other and started laughing because we obviously knew the Grateful Dead stuff. We knew the vibe.
Yeah.
So a couple of years after John and I met and played together, they're looking to put the band together post Jerry. And I was in kind of a dismal place. I was going through a bad breakup. I was really depressed with where my music life was at. I was very, very, well, I wasn't close to. I had decided I was going to leave the music business, that I was tired of having to reinvent myself month to month. And, I wanted a little job and life security. And right about the time I announced to the universe that I was fucking out of here, the universe got back to me and said, no, don't be ridiculous. You've given your whole life to this. You're really good at it. How about instead of giving up, we hook you up with one of your very favorite childhood bands. And so I suddenly got a phone call from John Molo saying, expect a phone call from Grateful Dead.
Wow.
And the very next phone call on my answering machine, remember those, was from Grateful Dead management. It was Cameron Sears saying, hey, we got your name from John Molo. Wonder if you'd be interested in coming up and playing with the boys. We're thinking about putting a band together.
Meant to be. How
Wow.
sweet. How
Yeah.
nice. Great story.
And you know, the interesting thing about that too, for me, is that I always had done dismally at auditions. Too much pressure. I wanted so badly to please whoever I was auditioning for that I usually didn't wind up being much of myself. I wound up being, trying to be who I thought they wanted me to be.
Sure.
And in so doing, watered it all down to the point where I was kind of nothing and didn't usually get the gig. So in this instance, I use the word in quotes, knew in advance I didn't have the gig. There was no way I was going to get this gig. So I went up there with the sense that, fuck it, I'm just going to go up because I get to play with those guys. And how fun is that going to be?
Right.
And I went up and let go of any hope of having the gig and just had a great time with them. And I'm pretty sure that's what got me the gig.
God bless you.
Yeah.
Nice. Very sweet. On Wikipedia, it mentions your fight with throat cancer, and I've been all over your website the last 72 hours. And this morning, I checked out your YouTube video on Walk Through Fire.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Where you talk about your situation, taking the guitar into the hospital. And halfway through the song, I'm getting choked up. It's just over the top, sweet, beautiful, just great work. And thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
Kind of made my morning musically checking that out. I was going, wow. Nice. And now we're going to meet this guy.
Well, I have to say that song, I think I probably said something to that effect in that clip you saw.
Yeah.
I don't really consider that I wrote that song. I mean, I wrote it down. But I think of that song as having been a gift to me, something that came through me rather than from me. Because when I was sitting in the hospital bed, I had no plans to write a song. I had come to the hospital knowing I was going to be there for a week, so I brought a guitar and a laptop and stuff like that to pass the time. But I had no idea that within about 15 or 20 minutes of climbing into that hospital bed, I'd be going, honey, can you hand me that guitar? And about 5 minutes later, hey, can you hand me a pad and a paper, pencil? I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm getting this idea. And within 15 minutes, the song had written itself. I didn't think about it. I didn't massage it. It just came.
Wow.
Thank God.
Yeah, exactly.
And cathartic, therapeutic, and just a gorgeous tune. Just
well, and I've been really blessed because a lot of people have reached out to me and told me that, and not just around illness. I have spoken to several people with cancer that was helpful to, but also people going through divorces and all, whatever the challenges are, everybody has their own version of walking through the fire.
It's a beautiful metaphor for struggling and facing the unknown.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Well, you knocked my socks off today, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Speaking of thank you, I need to thank you for your stint in Rock Justice years ago.
Yeah, man, that's how we know each other.
Yes, indeed.
And I always loved you because you always told me you liked my song "She's a Robot," my spoof song.
I love that. I love that, and you were one of the best defending guitarists ever.
Nice.
Are you still in touch at all with Barney?
Not really. I mean, a little bit via Facebook. We occasionally reach out to one another and threaten to get together, but it doesn't really seem to actually happen. Kind of like a lot of relationships in the world these days, it seems like. Been in touch with Jesse Bradman a little bit. Trying to think of who else from then. Pretty much nobody else, really. Yeah.
Speaking of the tribute cover sort of thing, are you at all in touch with Jeff Pilson?
No, again, Jeff and I were in touch a little bit via Facebook, and I've kept track of his career. I mean, he certainly did some pretty major things post Rock Justice.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You look at the tribute bands, and I mean, he's now been. I mean, he was in Dokken and now Foreigner. He's been in Foreigner longer than probably 20 years or something. And I think they're going to hang it up, but for the last 5 or so years, there hasn't been any original Foreigner guys in Foreigner.
Oh yeah, I'm friends with Michael Bluestein, the keyboard player.
Right. So you wonder what's the difference between the real band and a tribute band when there's no original guys.
Well, when they start dropping off like flies, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're more than entering that era.
Yeah.
How's your health right now? You look pretty strong.
It depends on how you want to look at it. I mean, big picture, my health is pretty good. I'm comfortable. Right. I don't have any major problems. But I'll be the first to admit I'm not very good at taking care of myself. I have a poor diet. I'm not very physically active. So I probably could be healthier than I am, but I'm doing all right.
I think I'm on the same program you are. I had a kind of athletic existence, had some knee replacement surgery, and now I'm an old man and enjoying the later years in life.
I'm kicking and I'm still in the kicking and screaming phase.
And don't stop and keep playing.
Yeah,
of course.
Speaking of keep playing, you're in touch with somebody else I know indirectly from Rock Justice, Michael Gaiman.
I am quite a bit in touch with Michael Gaiman. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're doing Gilmore Project, and I knew Michael because he worked for John Shear as the college booking agent back in the 80s when John Shear signed Rock Justice.
Yeah, sure.
And never got to do it because he got indicted for antitrust for monopolizing rock and roll promoting in 3 states. But Michael has gone on to an interesting career as a booking agent. Tell me about the Gilmore Project, because that's sort of outside of the Dead oeuvre.
It's a really cool band. It's interesting for me because I don't actually have a real history with Pink Floyd music. It's funny, when we started working up the Dark Side of the Moon record, I thought, well, I've never even owned a copy of this record. I've never particularly been a Pink Floyd fan. But once we started working out the music, I realized I knew every single song on the record, even though I'd never owned a copy or actively listened to it. It was just that influential. Looks like we're going to run out of time in 10 minutes for some reason.
How'd that happen? This is going too quickly.
Yeah, right.
No, we're cheapskates and don't pay.
I want to get my Pink Floyd story in, but it's not going to happen.
Oh yeah. Well, so anyway, real quick, Michael put this band together. There's lots and lots of Pink Floyd tribute bands, and some of them are really incredible and kind of a big deal. Like the Brit Floyd and Aussie Floyd bands are they play the sheds. They play big venues and sell them out. So Michael's idea was not to be a straight up tribute band, to have that element in there, but also to bring people like myself and Scott Guberman in, because we come from improvisation world. We come from Grateful Dead world.
Yeah.
And so he wanted to kind of do a mashup of authentic authentic Pink Floyd stuff, but with some of the ethos of improvisation and interpretation that the Grateful Dead brought to the party. So that's kind of what the band is a Floyd band that's not a tribute band. That's looking to reinterpret and find new spaces in the music.
Very, very cool. In the time we have left, I wondered, you would, as someone who's had certainly an interesting career, if you encounter, as I'm sure you do, young aspiring and up and coming musicians, do you have any advice for them? Do you think they should get involved in the tribute scene, just stick to their own original music? Or should they have hope that there'll be room for that?
That's a tough call. I mean, kind of like a parent, you know, I would want everyone to be able to do well in the world, you know, in with their lives, in terms of how they get by, how they survive and whatnot. And if I'm honest, it's gotten harder, if anything, to make a living as a musician.
Yeah.
Most of the younger musicians that I know have no experience with what I did all my life, which was couch surf and be in a band and don't worry about the money, starve for your art. You know, most of the musicians that I know these days have day jobs.
Yeah.
You know, and they do their music around their day jobs as they can. And you know, my family always used to say music is a great avocation, but you need a vocation. And I used to say, fuck you, I'm doing this. Uh, but nowadays I find myself maybe echoing my parents' sentiment a little bit, like go for it by all means. And if you really have the courage and the drive, go for it 100%. Don't get the day job, just dive in, you know, but know that if anything, it's gotten harder through the years and it may involve a lot of sacrifice to take that route. But, you know, on the other hand, if nobody takes that route, we're not going to have any more new music. We're not going to have a new Grateful Dead or a new Beatles or a new whatever, you know.
No, when I look at partly the tribute scene and the fact that kids don't buy records anymore the way we used to, I worry about where music is going to come from.
Agreed. Completely agreed.
Have you guys heard
And
of
the fact that you really can't make, you know, and I don't want to be get off my lawn about this, you know, but you know, the fact that you really can't make money, you can't monetize successfully recorded music is a crime to me, because music craft in the studio is a completely different art form than live music. They say just play live, just tour. Well, that's fine, but that's like saying, oh, well, you were a painter and a sculptor. Well, now just sculpt. You know, it's like what they're two different art forms, man. I love the studio as much as I love performing live. You know, and you got to be, I mean, if I spend 20, 30 grand making a record, I got to at least be able to have some hope of making my money back, if not ever turning a profit.
Yeah. No, I mean, having gotten into the internet at the beginning, and we all had great hopes about how wonderful it would be when all the world's information was interconnected. If you could have told me that just would have made hate more easy and it made it impossible to sell music
and blow the hell up out of the world of porn.
Yeah, exactly. It's not what we were hoping for in the early.
No, but is it ever? I mean, it seems like a lot of technological advances through the years. You know, you always do get the real developments. You get the positive growth and all of that kind of stuff. But you also get humans at their lowest denominator, and there seems to be more of that than there is of the higher aspiration part.
Yeah, no,
it's all about the money.
Yeah, the money and the instant gratification.
Now, is Wally Heider still around?
Yeah, they call it Hyde Street Studios now, but the studio still exists. I think what they do now is they rent out the individual studio spaces to individual artists and producers and stuff.
Now, don't most artists with all the new technology and Apple products are doing their own kind of recording studios, or?
You know, it depends. I mean, certainly we're talking in one right now. You know, this where I am is my studio space at my house. And a lot of us have that going on for sure. But as good as you can be at that, and as good as the product you can make with that might be, if like me, you've had the experience of being in a really, really nice studio with a room that's really dialed in and a big selection of microphones in the mic closet and all kinds of wonderful pre's and excuse me, compressors and all those toys, the sound quality and whatnot that you can get is a notch above. I mean, the Pro Tools world is pretty amazing now, and you can do Pro Tools at a very high resolution. And plugins have gotten way better, so I can't even say if maybe I'm just being an old fart, but I like working in the analog world. I like working with all that old gear. I like working in a real studio space that sounds like God as opposed to how my living room sounds.
Yeah.
Have you worked with Steve Barncart?
No, I'm certainly aware of Steven, but no, I don't think we've ever even met. Oh, we actually no, we have met, but we've never worked together.
In the 70s, after American Beauty, a friend of mine was trying to produce an album with him at Wally Heider's in San Francisco. And there were pretty kind of wild times, and there was too much white powder, and it never completely got off the ground, but a lot of money was spent. And he was one of the more interesting people I'd crossed paths with. And what I learned from him was he could take all these tracks and turn it into something beautiful. And
isn't he the one that did Crosby's If Only I Could Remember My Name record?
I think so.
Yeah, I tell you, somebody had turned me on to some outtakes from that record and some alternate tracks and stuff. And it's fascinating to see how they layered that stuff together. I mean, I heard some stuff that had been composited from multi-tracks down to a track that they were going to add to the overall mix. And the stuff that they actually left in there, that these days in Pro Tools land, oh no, tidy it up, fix it, perfect it. There's all this stuff that you would think they would have had to have taken out to make it sound like anything. They left it all in and ended up with this amazing sounding record.
Yeah.
So you remember the song Drop the Wine, Get That Girl?
Spill the Wine, sure, yeah. Yeah.
Steve Barncart was mixing, and they completed their session and they all dropped acid.
Oh.
And then the people just started riffing, and he said, I'm going to record this, which was Drop the Wine, Get That Girl.
Nice.
And then he said, this might be interesting. He passed it on to some DJ in the Midwest who was giving it airplay. Some other station picked it up, and then all of a sudden it was now in our body of music as a legitimate song. And it was just like off the top there, and he had the mindset to make something out of it.
Yeah.
In the less than a minute we have, I want to thank you, Mark. Thank both Marks.
Thank you. This was fun. I'm actually bummed out we're running out of time, but totally get it.
We might have to do it again. Don't get too bummed out.
Vinyl has come back.
What's that?
Vinyl has come back, though.
Bono?
Vinyl.
Vinyl.
Oh,